Just get here that way, right?
Oh, you can step out.
Yeah. Well, I know, but it's like, oh my gosh.
Did everyone here sign up by chance?
I did, I signed
Okay.
up.
We signed up.
All right, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to make sure who we're waiting for still, if they're a chauffeur.
It's pretty close to the number of chairs.
Well, we were 5 or 6 when we signed up yesterday.
Oh, yeah. Good,
How are you
I
doing?
found
Good.
out,
Good. Good to see you.
maybe a couple years ago that
I see you snooping around all the time in town. Incognito.
amazing
Nobody
how
know you're there
fast
except
you
you're always holding.
Oh, yeah.
We're not the only ones.
Kind of a fly on the wall.
I just told everybody
Really
here before you
big
got here that
Yeah.
if you're wanting for anything, you know.
I was over here, Glenn was over there.
Where is this gonna show
He's everywhere.
He's the man about town.
Yeah.
That's your tradition.
What did she do down there?
She does it small.
Oh, well, when I was with, I worked with the city for a while.
Who had your position before you?
First year,
Jill,
she
3 years ago.
was an
4 years
admin
ago?
assistant.
Jim,
And then they asked her to
I
stay
was a
in
lieutenant with the police department, and I retired and did that, and then I took over after him, and I was there for 3
She's
years.
there.
And you were still over in the church basement?
Yeah, I think
yeah.
so.
Jim
so-
Sheehan.
Jim,
Okay, yeah.
And
He was-
I should remember Jim's name.
Well, I forgot it one time too, and I thought it was, I missed it, and I was like, he corrected it.
Yeah, he was long hair.
Yeah, I'm going back. Growing the hair out, some earring, but
He reminded you
I started
of
really impressing people.
Also
My friends
Bill?
said, oh, it wasn't working anymore.
I did that,
Yeah.
I threw mine out one time, and I just, a year and a half, and I can't do it anymore.
Does it remind you of Uncle Bill?
And they go
Great
past.
guy.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
He is, even the lab. He's from Scotland.
Oh,
Excuse me, are you docked?
Yes.
Okay, so
So she had.
we're missing one, but I'm gonna probably get started here in a few minutes. People
But
seem
then
to always be late for classes.
She has a full-time job.
yeah, you can be the principal running down the hall, let's get to class.
That's right.
Hey, our principal, he was an old
Actually,
athlete,
wasn't
so
Pepper
the athletes in high school, you know, we kind of make us a little more slack, but
Oh my God.
he always come down there, aren't you guys supposed to be in class? Yes, sir, he says, well, you better get going then.
You know what, if I do it, it's nothing personal, I'm just tired.
Pardon?
If I
I
yawn,
have been yawning all day too,
no, if
so
I
I
yawn, just
took
that's
like
a great.
mega dose of vitamin B12, so we'll see if I even sleep tonight. Anyway. Okay, we'll get started if Elizabeth shows up a little bit later. We'll just make room. Obviously, the rain's changing things around a little bit for us tonight, but it's a good thing. Figures it held up pretty well until we were going to do our class. Anyway, I'm Rick Plush. I think I know most of you, at least by face and names and customers, but owner of Cliffrose, as you know, and a horticulturist. Born in the Southwest. I was born in Gallup, so that kind of made me fall in love with high desert plants and like wanting to green up the world, obviously, being in Gallup. When we started Cliffrose 20 years ago now, this summer, we started it with the idea of doing native and drought-tolerant plants, and inadvertently through the years, we ended up selling a little bit of everything, not just native and drought-tolerant. But getting to the native and drought-tolerant and the word xeriscape, does anyone know what xeric or xeriscape means?
No water or some water. Yeah. Dry.
Dry. So the city of Cortez has gotten, well, that's the problem. Anyway, you're going to get a $25 gift certificate to Cliffrose
That's good.
from the city of Cortez, because it does mean dry. And I think Denver Water Board and Water Department and the Botanic Gardens and a group years ago, probably 35 years ago or so, came up with the term xeriscape. And over the years, it's been bastardized quite a bit, including my previous boss here in this county, Larry Keeling, years ago used to always use the word xeroscape. And so many people use that word still, and it just irritates me because they're using it meaning like they want to do xeriscaping, native and drought tolerant, they're not using it insultingly. But it's just that they're saying zero. So anyway, so that's a little frustrating. So recently, and not too recently, there's a couple books here, the word water-wise, and I think that's where Karen and the city of Cortez are kind of moving terminology, because water-wise gardening, water-wise landscaping. Because xeric obviously is strange and people don't understand it, but the word native too, I mean the name of this class was native and drought tolerant plants for our area. Well, the word native is kind of a crazy word for Colorado. It's not the same as Nebraska, since we have native plants 14,000 feet, and then we have native plants at 5,000 feet. And we sell a lot of those here. So when someone comes in wanting to know where the native section is, it's like, well, it's all over the nursery. You know, we have columbine and aspens, and then we have yuccas and cactus. So in our landscaping, we can have those same zones. And that's part of the whole xeriscape. I'm going to teach a class on xeriscaping in June, but we won't get into all of the terms and stuff of that today. But xeriscaping, or the zones in your yard, you can have a sunny south side, you can have a really exposed windy side, you can have a shady north side, like my house in Cortez. I have big trees, faces north, and I'm growing all sorts of things that are far from native, but a lot of fun. So you have all those zones in your landscaping too. And the whole idea with xeriscaping and water-wise gardening is lumping the plants together that require the similar amount of care and water. Okay, so then like the sunnier part of your yard, you know, you could put all of the more drought tolerant, sun loving sort of shrubs, which we'll go over here. The north side, the cooler sides, the areas that where your maybe roof sheds a lot of moisture, you can make use of all that moisture and grow more wet loving, water loving plants in those areas. So it doesn't all have to be yuccas and, you know, fendler bush and things like that. You can have lots of fun stuff in your yard, just doing them in various zones for water requirements. I got some handouts for you. We can either watch some of these slides I have, or just, if it's not raining right now, we can usually hear if it's raining by the atrium roof here. So if it's not raining in a bit, we can walk outside and go take a look. But you can pass this around. This is Principles of Xeriscape, and this was from a previous class we used to teach here. So the word xeriscape I'm still using within reason. I'll kind of evolve into water-wise. This is what is very important, this next handout. I'll let you pass those around. This one here, the xeriscape plants, it's a little busy handout, but it's a list that we put together years ago, and I need to keep it updated. But we used, and this was a term coming from the Front Range years ago too, they were trying to play on the X of xeriscape, because it's not a Z, it's an X. And they were playing with X-rated plants. And there was this big campaign, X-rated plants. So it was like 1X, 2X, 3X. And we picked up on that years ago, and we used it on these handouts. And this chart is also on our website under the plant catalog. We don't have the photos hooked up with them, unfortunately, yet, but I'm going to work on that this summer. But anyway, so on one of the charts or the columns there, you'll see the X's. And that's going to be the triple X would be things like your yuccas and your cactus. And then maybe a single X might be something that's still going to be drought tolerant, but stuff like a potentilla. Potentilla, the little shrubs that are yellow, those are native, but they're native 8,000 feet, you know, so they're used to wet summers and wetter winters, you know. So putting them right next to a yucca can work if you've drip irrigated and you're watering the potentilla more than you are the yucca. But so that's going to have a different X category with our little breakdown here. So 1X, 2X, 3X, and you'll see them there. Periodically, we would have something like an M, you know, maybe for a dogwood, for moist. Dogwood shrubs, which are native up the river, Dolores River, but they're native on the riverbanks, as are like columbine and aspens that are native but require more moisture. So again, that word native gets a little vague. This is another handout here that I put together a few years ago, and it's just tough plants for the Cortez area. And on this, there's more than what we're supposed to talk about tonight, but I'll just go over that. Oh, things I was going to talk about tonight. Sorry. Do you guys understand what on the charts that we talked about? There's little check marks on the left margin, and I'm left-handed, so my check marks are usually backwards from all your check marks. But anyway, so those are things I was pretty sure we were going to have here to show you and talk about tonight. This other handout, Tough Plants for the Cortez Area, it's a front and back. And on that, obviously, shade trees. And some of you, did you go to the other talks on shade trees and on drought tolerant or native shade trees? Anyway, so there's been other talks on trees, so I was going to do shrubs for you guys. And deciduous shrubs versus evergreen shrubs. And then vines, perennials, grasses, lawns, all of that. We can actually start migrating through some of these photos here too. But I would...
Tough, you mean?
I mean,
They're hardy.
they're hardy. They don't require a lot. It's not like a rhododendron or so, or a hydrangea. Hydrangeas are cold hardy. They're zone 3s. We're a zone 5 here. But, they need an acidic soil. They need acidic fertilizer. They need humidity. They need moisture. They need that filtered light. That's not what we're here to talk about. But anyway, so that I would not consider a tough shrub. But some of these others, Grollo sumac, a 3-leaf sumac. We'll look at some of those outside. I don't have this in any order here, but let's see if we can just start migrating through this. That's the blue spirea, real tough shrub, my favorite, over Russian sage because, oh, come on. Russian sage looks like that, but Russian sage looks like a tumbleweed in the wintertime. This is a compact Oregon grape holly. We have creeping Oregon grape. Buffalo juniper versus red stem dogwood. And I probably should slow that down now, shouldn't I? Isn't that cool? And that is a blue grandma lawn. So once we start talking about lawns in future classes, I don't want to go that far.
Does that look like when it's cut? I mean, does it make a nice consistent?
It does. It does. And we have little lawn samples out in our display gardens. What am I doing? Sorry, you guys.
We'll have some demonstration plots of some water wise ground covers that look like the north side of the police department. You never did, or I never did find that map to give you, but that's a buffalo grass lawn, obviously. And buffalo grass and blue grandma are good lawns, but they turn straw color all winter, so they're not a bluegrass lawn. Anyway, this is a Pawnee Butte sand cherry, native on the eastern side of the state. This is just a sage, Powis Castle, native to our native sagebrush. Some landscapes in town. That's a multi-stemmed maple. Ornamental grasses aren't shrubs, but obviously they can be tough too. They're going to grow to the amount of water. This is an underused shrub too for drought. That's the purple sand cherry. Unbelievable. And it doesn't look like it should be. Contrast here, that was a broadleafed evergreen with rabbit brush behind it. This is just a collection of a bunch of the things we're going to look at. Hardy pampas grass. You water it, it gets 10 feet tall. You don't, it stays 4 feet tall. So that's a thing with like. No, I wouldn't consider it invasive. It is going to seed for you, though. Let me see if I can stop this. Well, anyway, the hardy pampas grass. People worry about that. It's not the true pampas grass, and that is a lot more weedy. But things like the blue spirea that we looked at very first, that looks like a Russian sage,
those will reseed themselves also. One way to stop that and to stop it with the grass, right? Free plants is to cut the seed heads, the dried flowers off in the late summer or fall. You can do that with rabbit brush too if you don't want it seeding all over your yard. So there's ways to get away with that. And my mouth's getting a little dry, but I was just going to say there's water if you guys need some water before we go walk out, and there are restrooms around the corner. This isn't a shrub either. It's Gora, which is wonderful. Not drought tolerant. This landscape is at Cortez Chiropractic, and it's gotten much bigger, but curly-leaf mountain mahogany, I'll show you that. It's a native evergreen shrub. Let's get going. Potentilla, we had talked about that earlier. Several different varieties of the potentilla from different colors. Thank you so much. I should have planned ahead. Rabbit brush, there's several varieties of that too. Blue leaf, green leaf. There's Russian sage. It's beautiful. There's so many new varieties of it. Ornamental grasses, but Russian sage, sold as a perennial. It's basically a shrub in some cases. But there's new dwarf varieties, tall varieties, fan-shaped blobs. A lot of perennials in here. I didn't edit that out, but you can do native meadows instead of lawns. These are sort of sub-shrubs. Our cactus can be considered a shrub. I have some of those out there to look at. There are so many different prickly pears when you go hiking, like at Hawkins and Carpenter, that native around here. That's a perennial, but it acts like a shrub. Lavender is sold as a perennial, but it acts like a shrub because it doesn't die to the ground every winter, and that's what perennials do. Shrubs are woody, and so lavender is technically a sub-shrub. This is a honeysuckle vine that's pretty drought tolerant called Kinsley's Ghost. It actually looks like eucalyptus. Yuccas don't have to be in a sea of gravel. They can be surrounded by flowers, all sorts of wildflowers, other shrubs growing up to them. I'll show you that other one again. That was related to our Mormon tea. But anyway, this is a yucca, and over at the City Service Center, that one's planted too. That's a tree yucca that we can grow here called the soap tree. It actually forms a little trunk on it over time. Just more, this friend of mine's garden up in Denver. Anyway, Russian sage, salvias, yuccas, and the purple sand cherry behind there. You know, in place of a lawn, you can just do a lot of little sages, small sages. Purple robe locust has its bad points, but it's a tough shrub. This is over at Vectra Bank, so the low ground cover junipers, and then this Pawnee Butte sand cherry in fall color. Just amazing, and that's from the eastern side of Colorado. This is the north side of the county or the courthouse. Those are broadleafed evergreens. This is winter fat on the reservation. Just a fun, different textured plant. Snowberry, native a little higher up in the mountains. That's a close-up of the berries. But again, something that could do well on the east or the north side or under a tree. I think that's maybe another euonymus, not a three-leaf sumac. That's a native rose with a slightly red leaf. So the wild rose that only blooms once a year. Potentillas, creeping spruce. Again, more of a Russian sage and a potentilla. Combined boulders are phenomenal to use in landscapes. Again, potentillas.
Should they be cut back at any time?
Yes.
Yes. Should that be done every year? Or?
They bloom on new wood like a rose bush, so you can prune them in the spring, like March, April. Ornamental grasses you prune back in April, let them enjoy them waving around all winter long. Xeriscape is our mountains, our sides of our roads. It's just plants are growing where they get the water that they need. So it was funny. I was driving across from Moab up to I-70 on a back road, and it was only green in the August from the 4 feet off the side of the road. Everything else was parched. But, that's xeriscape. The plants are using the water that rolls off the side of the road. Those are very green. And, green along the river, dry up everywhere else. different plant zones in each of those areas that we need to just think about, and you can have those zones in your yard. That is hardy rosemary, and that's a neighbor of mine on Montezuma. Yeah, it's a zone 5 rosemary, just stays real low. Again, surrounding yuccas with other things, so they're not just in a sea or a sea of gravel or so, which still looks fine, but the landscaping at Cortez Chiropractic, which is Kiviak's landscaping, that's Burger Boy, just ornamental grasses, but that's pretty, yeah. Cortez Chiropractic has a lot of native and drought tolerant plants, and they're planted fairly tight, so they're looking lush, so you don't have to have everything perfectly spaced like you see a lot of landscapes. You can put things closer, let them fill together, it'll be nice and full, and give you that feeling of a landscape that looks or requires more water. It's Pussy Toes and Creeping Veronica, 2 native ground covers. I think it's either service or I think it might have been Apache plume. There's a lavender, and lavender, again, subshrub, not a native, but does very well here with a little winter water. Ornamental grasses. There's our namesake Cliffrose, which is blooming in the canyons right now phenomenally if you haven't been out hiking. Arizona cypress, another really, really tough evergreen for our area. I think that's the ending. That's over in Hawkins. Anyway, any questions? There are, yes, and that we'll look at some outside when we go walking. The Utah serviceberry is our more native one from here west, and probably up in Mesa Verde too, but there's also a mountain serviceberry which comes down out of the hills too, and that requires a little more water. It's a pretty shrub too, gets somewhere in this height range to where the Utah can get taller. The Utah serviceberry is slower to grow. I think the mountain serviceberry's berries taste better. They're more like blueberries of sorts. But anyway, serviceberries are amazing. They're going to start blooming now if they're not already.
We have a lot of
Fendler bush is going to bloom. That's the other white flower that blooms early now in the spring. That's a native shrub. The 3-leaf sumac, I'll show you outside if you're not familiar with that. 3-leaf sumac is just an amazing native shrub. The natives use it for the branches for baskets, and the red fuzzy seeds on it they use for like flour or to flavor water, I think, because it has a lemony flavor. Anyway.
There are recipes that call for sumac. Is that the sumac we're talking about?
Probably so. Not the poison one, but that one. But,
called lemonade berry.
yeah, it's amazing. But it's a great shrub, and where I was going to head with that, it's native around here in Carpenter Natural area behind the hospital there. One summer years ago, it was so dry, and the only thing green there other than the little stream going through were some of these 3-leaf sumacs that were just out in the middle of nowhere and just tough. They used to be the hedge on South Broadway, the city's island, way south of town. Used to be a 3-leaf sumac hedge, and it was obviously a plant planted in the wrong spot because it grew too high, and CDOT didn't like that, so the city had to prune it, which I worked for the city for 2 years. We'd have to go prune that in the busy highway to keep it a little square box. But there was no water on those islands on that South Broadway, and that stuff was just green and lush all summer, and dust and everything else that goes with it. But
how about that 5-leaf sumac?
Is that the marijuana? That's I wouldn't consider that drought tolerant yet, but well, it could be native. Anyway.
Are there 2 kinds of sand cherry? Because this
Yeah.
one has Pawnee Butte, and you were saying purple.
But the purple sand cherry is, and we'll go see that because it's not raining here, so it'll be nice to just walk around a little bit and look at some of these more in person. But yes, the purple sand cherry is not native, but is unbelievable. Does well. where was it? The shop at that Radio Shack used to be in had a bunch of purple sand cherries and Russian sage out in that gravel expanse there, but they were pretty much left, I think, on their own, and they do really, really well. There's some around town trimmed as hedges. The western sand cherry is gorgeous, and you see that a lot in the fall. You notice it more driving through the mountains and up to Denver on the sides of the hills because it gets a nice fall color. And then Pawnee Butte sand cherry I'd mentioned a couple times. Vector Bank has some in the front of it on Montezuma. It's very low, grows on the sand hills on the eastern side of Colorado, and beautiful white flowers in the spring that are fragrant, and then a gorgeous fall color. So it's good on berms or, doing
So it needs sandy soil?
No, it does well here. We're far from sandy, so that's, I mentioned it a little bit with watering. The nice thing about drip systems, and we'll be doing a drip class too come June. It's hard for me to do classes in May because our parking lot, unless I do the classes at night, because we just can't be busy during the day and have a bunch of people for a class. So I'll do them when we start slowing down a little bit. But the nice thing about drip systems is you can have something getting a half gallon, a gallon, 2 gallons, 4 gallons, or 6 gallons per hour, shrubs. And you can have that same line going by the yucca, watering it maybe a half gallon an hour, and watering a potentilla, 2 gallons an hour or so. But so you're not out there watering, and the system's not watering everything way too much, which is what a lot of homeowners do, with having either irrigation water that's not their tap water. They water way too much. So all of the shrubs are getting the same amount of water that the lawn gets. But with a drip system, you can pinpoint that, to where you can even go to that yucca a year later and turn it off or cut it off and keep watering the potentilla and the serviceberry and all the other things that you're wanting in your landscape, without having to deprive them because you cut off one other. But, if you're needing something, say, if the Pawnee Butte sand cherry really needed a sandier soil, you can create berms for things like that and mound it up. Cortez Chiropractic has Pawnee Butte sand cherry and another sumac I haven't talked about, but Grollo sumac gets about this tall instead of our 3-leaf that gets much taller. Same sort of concept. Its leaves sort of look like an oak, spreads out, and great fall color too. But it doesn't require a grittier soil.
Does that low profile sand cherry, will that spread out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, quite well. Like maybe, probably like an 8 or 10 foot.
Ground cover type?
It's shorter at Vectra for some reason. It's probably only like 6 inches tall, but I've seen it up to 12 inches. Same like the Grollo sumac. I have some out here that's about knee high. And a lot of times I see it only about 12 or 14 inches tall.
I have a different question.
Yeah.
We had a garden with a lot of cacti, and one of the yuccas looks like a fruit. The other two look okay. And I thought, I told my husband she shouldn't be throwing that much snow in there. Well, this winter, it got...
You couldn't avoid that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so is that what did it?
Mm-hmm. Most likely. I lost 2 the same way. And the red flowering yucca, which isn't a true yucca. It's just called yucca because it has the straps. Do you know what I mean by the red flowering yuccas? We'll see some outside here. Anyway, it looks like a yucca. Deer and rabbits love it because it's soft. It's actually more related to an aloe vera. And that's probably why it gets eaten so much. But it hates being overwatered also. It's from, Texas. And so I lost a couple yuccas that were on flatter areas, or we plowed our snow up front here, and it puddled. And the clay, if it was a grittier soil, it would have been fine. If it was on a berm, it would have been fine. But exactly, we just had way more moisture on a saturated ground. Yeah, what a winter, huh? And what a spring we're moving into. It's pretty crazy. Anyway, some of these books, this one, I think all of these are out of print. Maybe I should look, but we can still find this one. There's a whole series of this. There's different colored covers. There's a red one and a yellow one. But one gets into more landscape design. I forget what the yellow one does. But this one has individual plants on each page. And it'll tell you companion plants, which I think is always phenomenal, things that will look good with them. And you're more than welcome to thumb through this because I do have a couple of them. I will try to find some of these, but I mean, all of us have the ability to go to Amazon and look for something. But it also has usually the picture of what the plant looks like in the winter, which for me as a horticulturist and landscape designer, I like to design for this climate in this area for things that look good in the winter. For God's sakes, our winters are 6 months long, and if we don't have snow, we have brown. And if everything's deciduous and loses its leaves, you know, everything just looks like sticks, i.e. potentilla to me looks like a tumbleweed in the winter time. So it's not one of my favorites. It's beautiful, it blooms most of the summer like rose bushes, but it looks bad in the winter. So I like things that either have texture in the winter, like grasses or the blue spirea, or things that are evergreen, either needled evergreens or broadleafed evergreens like euonymus or hollies, things like that. So anyway, but you can thumb through these either after class, but let's walk around outside if you guys are ready. Am I hearing any rain on the roof there? Did it just start? I kind of missed my window.
I think
Canyon de Che's bookstore. And it's a little book like almost Namaste or and it's a Navajo book about all of the foods they can, or all of the uses the native shrubs have. Oops, sorry, Karen. Cut you off. Anyway, all right. I have the shrubs lined up over here, so we'll try to make it quick. Try to make it easy for us within reason. They're just not full grown. So,
Then you can't forget.
yeah, these are the non-natives here, from here on over. This kind of is in between. So I'll start with that one. This is a blue spruce, but not a tree blue spruce. It's a shrub blue spruce. A globe one. This one's called Montgomery. I have one planted in our Kiva ruin up front. They get to be kind of a lumpy pyramid, but fun. Blue spruce can handle the sunny, dry deserts because of the blueness on it. It helps reflect the sun a little bit. Get them established. They're never going to be on their own like a yucca would be, but I mean, as far as on their own with no watering, but they're going to be, you know, happy with once a week, a couple times a month, good soaking. Okay. And that's what I should say too, on any of the shrubbery, we get in the habit of watering way too often in our area. And especially people with automatic systems. You know, I talk to customers that have their sprinklers go off every day for 12 minutes. I mean, that's just ludicrous. And, you know, you're not getting a deep drought tolerant root system by doing stuff like that. Why would the roots want to leave any of that moist soil? So you water less often, longer, deeper, and the roots will chase the water deeper. So like my house, I tend to do an hour once a week on most of my landscaping, 45 minutes early in the season, and then in the summer I usually go to an hour. But you train everything to go deeper. I.e., you can have a spruce that is used to the mountains, but it can tolerate much deeper, wetter soil because you're watering deeper. Anyway, junipers have a bad rep. I happen to love the dwarf ones. I think it would be hilarious to do a whole landscape in someone's yard that is all junipers, from the ones that are 2-inch high, 6-inch, 12-inch, the hedgy types, the upright ones. I mean, it would just, you could do it. And there's blue leaf, green leaf, yellow leaf. I mean, they're hilarious. Lavender, I had mentioned, was a subshrub, fairly drought tolerant, obviously from the Mediterranean. There's a book I have inside there too called Step Gardening that the Denver Botanic Garden is pushing. And we live in a steppe sort of geology here. It's high deserts and in the shadows of mountain ranges and things. There's steppes all over the planet, in South America, in Asia, in Russia, Europe area, and Africa. And it's similar climate to ours, and that's where a lot of our new plants are coming from that the Botanic Garden is bringing. But some Mediterranean type plants, step garden plants. Barberries, tough, give you that color. There's skinny upright ones, dark cranberry ones, yellow ones, green ones. They all get beautiful orangey red fall color afterwards. The broom family, related to the ephedras, which are Mormon teas, but this is a blue leaf ephedra from China. It's about this tall, red berries on it. There's a bunch of these down from my house if someone knows where I live. The other brooms, this is a moonlight broom, blooms early. Spanish broom, you may know from seeing it in Farmington and Albuquerque, blooms in the summer, gets much taller. Anyway, this is fun for early bloom. They're basically evergreen too. So they don't have needles, but their stems are that same color all winter.
Is that related to Scotch broom?
It's not like Scotch broom standing. Yeah. Scotch brooms are banned in a lot of areas, yeah. Yeah. This one here is a Janista. Its cousin is woadwaxen. I've always loved that name. That's another Janista gets taller. It's called Lydia broom. And here in about a month, it will be a sea of yellow. And only gets about 12, 15 inches tall. Just amazing. In May, early June. Here's the red flowering yucca that I had mentioned. Not a true yucca, but related to the aloe vera. And again, a shrub. Another yucca-looking plant, which is always fun to have texture changes in your landscape, from little leaves to things like this, to the grassy sort of foliage, to big blocky leaves. But blooms all summer, attracts hummingbirds, so that's a nice plus, but does not want to be overwatered, and deer and rabbits love it. Anyway, I wish these were blooming. This is the blue spirea, and I put Russian sage and blue spirea together because they look similar when they're blooming. They bloom the same time, about late June, July, on through September. Russian sage, I was telling you earlier, I think looks like a tumbleweed in the winter. This one here will have straw leftover flowers left on it. It has a dome sort of habit to it, so it looks really pretty in the winter time. And its flowers, again, blue. Gets an interesting fall color, kind of a yellow, orangey melon if the fall is nice and gradual. And the Russian sage, I think most of you know Russian sage. It's getting a bad reputation. I think some of the original ones they run all over the place. Some of the newer hybrids aren't as bad at spreading like that. And this is an Oregon grape holly, and this is the taller version of our native creeping Oregon grape holly. Our creeping one gets probably only about that high, spreads out, yellow flowers in spring, grape berries on it in the summer, can take half a day of shade or half a day of sun or less.
And the leaves aren't glossy like that.
The new leaves are glossy on a lot of them, but then, they will change over the course of the year. It's an evergreen, so it's nice that it will have that texture in the wintertime. The leaves will turn various colors like this in the winter, but they don't fall off. I have the creeping Oregon grape at my house, and it's native. You see it in the mountains, and even not as high as the high mountains, but you'll see it in various places. A lot of times it's only this big here, but in a landscaping with good soil, it gets about 12, 15 inches tall. It does spread. But where I have it on my north side of a fence, it stays beautiful dark green all winter. Where I have it on the south side of that fence and the trees lose their leaves in the winter that shade it in the summer, it gets all of the beautiful fall color, which is interesting. And these are like 5 feet away from each other, but just on the other side of a fence. So it's kind of fun to see that. I showed a dwarf lilac, but lilacs are one tough cookie for a shrub. These are dwarfs that only get 4 to 5 feet tall. You all know the other lilacs because they're blooming all over town. Spectabulous right now. I mean, amazing year for some things to bloom. But lilacs are tough. They're slow to get going at the beginning. first 3 to 5 years, but you see them in abandoned farms and ranches, just kicking butt. Cold hardy, they're zone 3s, so that's like minus 50, minus 40, I should say. Unbelievable. Here is the the purple sand cherry, also known as Sistina plum. Purple sand cherry. Tiny pinkish white flowers in the spring, gets anywhere from 4 to maybe 6, 7 feet tall. Just that beautiful purple color, so it's really nice. In the fall, the purple gets a little bit more reddish, burgundy or so.
Any issues in windy area?
Pardon?
Any issues in a windy
Nope.
area?
Nope. As long as you get it irrigated, then the first probably 3 years are the baby years with most things other than a cactus and yuccas, to get them going, get them toughened up, get those roots nice and deep. Yes, there's a hedge on Park Street, on the just west of the library, but I think a little north. Somebody has it on their south side of their house, but along a sidewalk, and they keep it about this high. Hedges are one of those things that, you marry your shears at that point in time, but you can put them pretty dense and have them as an informal hedge to where you're just pick pruning, here and there rather than buzzing it into a square. Honeysuckles, I'll show you a spectabulous one up front. This is an old-fashioned one. The pink flowers, the green leaves, but there's some that Plant Select has introduced that's a blue-leafed one. And I have one up front that I've trained into a small tree because it obviously was a plant planted in the wrong spot, and I'm the one that did it. I thought it was only going to be like 3 to 4 feet tall, and it ended up the next few years I got the plants into sell, and I looked at the tags, and I'm like 6 to 10, and I just never dug it up and moved it. So then I saw in the city parks they had an old honeysuckle by the visitor center, and instead of clearing it out when they cleaned out all the shrubs years ago, they left it and they started trimming it like a small tree, and it just has beautiful bark, and we'll see that up front. And this is it's related to the Siberian pea shrub. It is a creeping Siberian pea shrub. There is weeping Siberian pea shrubs where this has been grafted up on a stem, and it's it's going to get maybe only 4 feet tall and spread. The true Siberian pea shrubs get like lilacs, 6 to 12 feet tall. The word Siberian should be a buzzword for us. Anything that says Siberian or Russian are going to be tough in the Cortez, Montezuma County area. But they bloom early in the spring with these yellow flowers, and they're not much else in the summertime other than the early spring, but the bark is really pretty to look at. And then this one has a contorted sort of look to the branching, which can be really fun. They're a pea family, so they produce nitrogen in their soil off the roots around them, like honey locusts do, anything in the legume sort of family. So that's kind of nice. So they kind of perpetuate their own food by taking the nitrogen out of the environment and leaving it in the soil. So kind of nice. So not all of the imports, but a good bunch of fun ones. We can move over here and start looking at the natives. We have a section I told you here where we do try to separate the native shrubs from other shrubs. And in this bed, we have natives that maybe are lower elevation that like a little more water. And then the other side is the higher elevation natives, where it's like the snowberry I had mentioned. It's going to require a little more water, some of the sand cherries initially, as compared to, some of the Utah serviceberry, which is in front. Anyway, let's start right here. Yuccas, obviously a no-brainer. But the thin-leafed yuccas versus our banana yucca. The banana yucca goes higher elevation than most yuccas, so you'll see that 7,500 feet, sometimes 8, in amongst some aspens, which blows me away. But these are more in the canyons, the narrow-leafed yuccas. And there's a couple. That's probably it. Yeah, this one would have made it a little more. Although I lost mine. I told you I lost mine up front. The cactus you know, kind of a shrub of sorts, you know, because they don't die to the ground like perennials do. But the choyas are spectacular. They can get 6 feet tall or so. Big flowers on it in June that look like roses. These others are like hedgehogs and the prickly pear. And the prickly pear, there's hundreds of different colors of those. And I think there's 7 or 8 just in Hawkins Natural Area on the south side of Cortez, different colors of those. So fun. This is great. This is an evergreen ground cover called Cannon Creek Buckwheat. It has this beautiful flower on it, chartreuse right now. That'll turn kind of a nugget gold in the late summer. The foliage is low, maybe 4 to 6 inches tall. In the winter, it's an evergreen, but in the winter, it turns red. So pretty spectacular. We have one on our Plant Select demo bed over there that's 10 years old, I guess, and it's probably like this wide. Just beautiful, cascading down. The rabbit brush family, when we first opened Cliffrose, some of the old timers would come here and cuss me out for selling rabbit brush and sagebrush. But it's amazing how many people move and build a new house and come in and want this, so it's kind of nice. But in the rabbit brush, there's the blue-leafed one and the green-leafed one. Those are all the taller varieties. There's a dwarf one that only gets anywhere from 12 to maybe 2 feet tall or so. All have that beautiful mustard yellow flower in late summer. I mean, you can't beat that for color. Rabbit brush next to blue spirea or the Russian sage is just spectacular, that contrast. That's where Russian sage almost looks like it should be native here. You know, it just has that sort of rabbit brush sort of feeling. This isn't really a shrub, but gets about as big as one. This is the native 4 o'clock, which has a taproot, likes well-drained soil. The desert 4 o'clock can get, 18 inches tall, 6 feet wide, blooms like those little beautiful pink funnels in the summer. Spectacular. Then it breaks off like a tumbleweed, and the whole plant is gone in the winter if it doesn't, get blown away. Yeah, it's a perennial, so it comes back, but the whole structure is gone usually. It just breaks up. So yeah, you clean it up. Anyway, here is our native ephedra, or the Mormon tea, as compared to the blue-leafed one back there from China. Again, one of those broom sort of looking plants. It's an evergreen. Another evergreen, native, more in the Uncompahgre area, are the manzanitas. And there's several different varieties of these. They typically form, kind of domes, spreads out. Tiny pink flowers now in the spring, evergreen, beautiful bark as it gets older. Lord, can you do me a favor? Yeah, I won't need that. Anyway, you can see the cinnamon sort of bark on the inside of it. If you've ever driven to Phoenix over the Mogollon Rim, the subforest there is all manzanita. It's just amazing. And if you pull over to the side of the road and you just see as these stems get big and thick, they're just that cinnamon color. They're amazing. But anyways, there's like 4 varieties that we sell of that. 3 of them are Plant Select introductions. Potentilla, my... It's not Spanish.
Oh, it is?
It's Latin. So potentilla. Anyway, I just wanted, this is, typically they're butter yellow. This is one that's more of a pale yellow. It's beautiful, called lemon meringue. Anyway, there's orange ones, there's pink ones, white ones. They're in the next bed over our low shrub area.
Oh, look at those.
Aren't they fun? A lot of the pink and the orange and the red flowering ones, with our elevation and our sun, they don't stay that color long. So the buds come out, they open, and then they fade white within about 3 or 4 days. They're a plant that likes full sun, but if you move those colors into a part shade or half a day area, they're happier, and they would bloom or keep their bloom color on longer, which is nice. I showed you a photo on the slides of the snowberry. This is more native in the mountains, so it's good on if you mix it with aspens. It's hard to tell, but that first berm over there on my property line is more our mountain berm. It has the aspens and alder and snowberry and things like that on it, and the Colorado blue spruce. So here we're going to get a little more droughty. So fern bush, an unbelievable shrub, 4 to 5 feet tall. Mine up front is 8 feet wide now, but it's evergreen, and it has this ferny looking foliage on it. Has a creamy white flower shaped like a lilac flower in summer, like late June. So pretty amazing. Has a stinky sort of leaf to me. A lot of people like it. It's one of those irritation smells to me. Like, I won't. Anyway, but wonderful, really tough. This is a golden currant, and oh, they're amazing. And I wished this one was blooming. But they bloom about the same time forsythias do now in the early spring, and then get fairly tall, have the currant-looking leaf, and a nice fall color on it.
We've got 2 or 3 of those just coming up.
Birds will poop them all around, so you may have them volunteering. This is the 3-leaf sumac I had mentioned earlier. Kind of has that oak-looking leaf. Very, very tough, 4 to 6 feet tall. 6 feet wide, great fall color. The Grollo sumac was another one I had talked about, kind of like the Pawnee Butte sand cherry. It's a lower cousin of this, spreads out. A lot of you may know staghorn sumacs, the ones that look like bamboo, thick, have big, longer leaves, beautiful fall color too. There's some versions of those that are native. There's a Rocky Mountain one that I didn't bring it over, but it's in one of the beds there. It only gets about this tall and spreads out, but it has more of the palmy looking leaves. Here is the western sand cherry. So as compared to the purple sand cherry down there, this is the native Colorado one. Gets anywhere from 4 feet tall to 6 feet tall. And I should say this vagueness of heights. If you look in a lot of books that describe the heights of, say, rabbit brush, fern bush, curly mountain mahogany, we're going to look at, they will say 3 to 8 feet or 3 to 10. I mean, that is all over the board, but a lot of that depends on conditions, your soil, how much water you're given, everything. But this is really fun, wispy, great fall color. Its dwarf cousin, the Pawnee Butte sand cherry, would have the same flower, but on a low prostrate sort of plant like that. And then again, great fall color. Here's our serviceberry. This is the Utah serviceberry, not the mountain one. So again, the nice flowers now, the berries that the bears love, and if you can beat animals to them, they're great. There is a landscape version of this. It's a Canadian called the Autumn Brilliant serviceberry. That's more of a small tree, like 12 feet tall. Great berries on it too, much bigger. But if you need that multi-stem small tree look, I didn't have any big ones to show you, but this is our Fendler bush. But the Fendler bush are blooming on the hillsides now and around Dolores up in Mesa Verde. 4-petaled white flower, really brilliant white compared to like the serviceberry is a little bit of a dull white. These are like just brilliant white, and they're 4-petaled. Most every.
Do they get berries?
They don't get a berry. It's more of a seed pod, you know, a capsule of sorts. Now I don't have any more Cliffrose left. I showed you that one photo of a Cliffrose. This is Cliffrose's cousin called Antelope Bitterbrush. Spectacular. Still has that yellow 5-petaled flower of Cliffrose. It's an evergreen also like Cliffrose is, but a little smaller, short. We're in an area where they both overlap, the Antelope Bitterbrush versus the Cliffrose. Cliffrose is blooming all over the canyons. I think Mesa Verde has both. I need to look at that plant roster. Apache Plume, which is pretty spectacular, is a 5-petaled white flower. It's in the rose family again, so it's flowers about this big, real flat, real simple 5-petaled. But then it puts on these pink feathery plumes in the summertime. So pretty neat. And this is another vague one with height. So mine up front in my landscape there is only like 3 feet tall or so. There's a house over by the golf course that has the buffalo grass lawn, just spectacular, and they have a hedge of these that are like this tall, but they're getting probably a couple times a week watering on the buffalo grass lawn. But really, really, really spectacular. This is the native mock orange. So another white flower native. It's not as prolific around here as the fendler bush and serviceberry, but you'll see it up in Mesa Verde. It's another 4-petaled white flower. Fragrant, like if you know the smell of mock orange, it has that orange blossom sort of fragrance. I think that's where they came up with the name. A little more of a ratty look to it, but definitely has its place. Well drained. Chokecherry, obviously a little higher elevation, but suckers, and so it would form a big thicket. But this is our native chokecherry. White flowers, great berries that the birds usually love, or you can make jams out of if you beat the birds to it. It gets fairly 6 feet to maybe 12 feet, depending on conditions, your soil and the water. This is Curdia, the silver buffalo berry. Can tend to look Russian olive-like, and I don't mean that in a bad way, with the berries on it in the late summer. There's some of this up the Dolores River before you get into town that will form these big thickets, maybe to 12 feet tall. And you notice it more with the color of the foliage, because the foliage should be silvery. But then in the late summer, fall, the berries on it are kind of a rusty orange red, sort of. It's just pretty. Okay, this family is fun. These are the mountain mahoganies. And let me clear this out. This is the native one in our hills around here. It's called birch leaf mountain mahogany, and it's deciduous. So fun, forms a thicket. You see it blooming a lot with serviceberry and the oak brush. And where's oak brush? We'll get all these in here. But this one, curl-leaf mountain mahogany, is evergreen. And we had this down in Gallup growing up in the hills, so 6,000, 7,000 feet. And then I see it up near Grand Junction and Gateway area. I don't see it around here. I'll show you one of these books inside before we leave too that has maps of all the 4 corner counties, and it kind of tells you where plants are, so it's kind of neat to see. But this forms like a refrigerator in looks, so can get that tall, but it has a real neat grayish red bark. It's a little darker now with the water, but anyway, really pretty. Again, gives you that evergreen look in the wintertime, so that's kind of nice. This here, again, requiring a little more water. This is our native birch, river birch for the mountains. So forms a thicket along the creeks about 6 to 12 feet tall. Again, the typical birch leaf, cinnamon sort of bark on the inside. So can you see all right? Anyway, fun to have if you have a wet area. And we all can have those wet areas in our yard, whether it's our roof, our gutter, our driveway, our sidewalks are all shedding water somewhere. So you can channel that with a dry stream bed or so and have things that like water along that dry stream bed. New Mexico privet. It's not a true privet, just called that, but this is a big one here. So they get to be anywhere. I have one near our gate over there, the lighter green look. Anywhere from 6 to maybe 10, 12 feet tall. It's one of those things that's wanting to be a shrub, but if you train it to be a tree, a small tree, by cleaning out the branching once a year or so, it just makes it look like because in the desert we don't have tall trees, we have multi-stem smaller trees. But you can make most shrubs into a small tree, which can kind of be nice. Serviceberry can be the same.
Why do you have those white things on there?
That was just to ship it. So, yeah. Anyway, it has these berries on it. There's a male and female of these. So, unfortunately, if you don't have both, you're not going to get the berries. But a lot of times, sometimes they'll try to put 2 in the same pot. But anyway, the birds love these berries. I'm surprised those are still on there. But
Mine is doing wonderful.
oh,
It's huge.
aren't they amazing?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just a trooper. I have one up in the front that I haven't watered in 10 years. And, you know, it's not tall. It's only like this. And that one I don't water either. But, well, I shouldn't say that. Every now and then I'll water those shrubs. But this is more tree-like, and that wasn't supposed to be our talk. But native junipers, obviously. And then this is the big tooth maples. So we do have a couple maples that are native in our area. The big tooth and then the Rocky Mountain. They're not tall trees. The big tooth will get, it's actually, as far as evolution goes, it's a sugar maple holdover that's evolved in the Rocky Mountains and evolved to drier climates. Supposedly, like when the Sierras got lifted up, it dried out the Rockies, and the Rockies, things shrunk. And this is the sugar maples genetically. So it has the same look of a sugar maple. It's not going to get the height. It's also called Wasatch maple, so it grows up around Salt Lake City up in the hills. Great fall color, usually that orange, sort of rusty. You'll see it on the hills if you drive up to Salt Lake a lot in the fall. You'll see these brilliant colors of orange, and they're either this or a serviceberry. And then the Rocky Mountain juniper, which is Rocky Mountain maple. Small maple, more like a shrub. You know, I've seen some of these up Scotch Creek, four-wheeling. So they require more moisture. They only get maybe about 8 to 12 feet tall. Great fall color too when they get it, but just a little slower growing or a lot slower growing and just kind of a little more ratty. Doesn't like it as much in the hot dry. It's more of a mountain to where the Wasatch can take it a lot wetter. I mean, a lot drier. All right. Any questions? Yeah, right. So, depending on where we're at, we're like an hour into this. Do you want to walk around and look at a few things that are bigger? Okay. We'll eventually go up front, but I want to walk you by this berm over here. That's our Plant Select berm, and I've thrown out Plant Select a few times. Do you all know Plant Select? It's a collaboration between the Denver Botanic Gardens, the nursery, garden center industry, and CSU, the horticulture department, trying to introduce either new plants, reintroduce old plants, just find some great plants for the high deserts or the steppe areas like we were talking about earlier. So like a lot of the ice plants and hyssops and all are coming through Plant Select. So they test them out in Denver Botanic Gardens first, and then they'll bring them out to the industry once they get enough propagated. But the ice plants are all coming from a steppe region in South Africa. So similar to our drier area. They don't get the snow that we do, but they're cold and dry and grittier, poor soils. But anyway, kind of fun. So the Plant Select, we're a demonstration garden for them. And it's funny, the Heritage Center has a demonstration garden also. And we're lower elevation in Cortez, but we get colder here than they do up there. They may have a longer winter, but we get colder, and I lose things that they don't lose over the winter. So it's kind of odd. So let me just show you a manzanita over here that's done really well. I know. I love pots.
You sort of got carried away.
Yeah, I did get carried away this year. When the truck driver came to unload, and I had, how many pallets? Like 8 pallets of pottery. I about died. Anyway, so this is one of the manzanitas. This is one of the smaller ones. Smaller in height, but it spreads out more. It's called mock bearberry. So it's related to kinnikinnick. Kinnikinnick is in the same genus. But, so the flowers are finishing up here. This one's a paler pink. Some of the other varieties with the bigger leaves that get taller are deeper pink, but they're little tiny urns, urn-shaped flowers. I think they're in the heath family too, like heaths and heathers, and maybe rhododendrons. But anyway, cute. Again, an evergreen. Great if you had a big boulder, somewhere nearby, just for it to ooze around. Junipers do that same thing. They ooze around, the low junipers. They ooze around in boulders really nicely. And I should say this really quickly. It's a xeriscape concept, but whether you use bark mulch or gravel mulch to landscape around, we all want to use something organic like bark chips and all, but here in Cortez, a lot of our rains and snows are pretty minuscule most years. But so the bark chips will a lot of times absorb all the moisture that never gets down to the roots or to the soil. But in the desert, the gravels and all will shed the water, and it goes right underneath to the soil, to the roots. So FYI, when you're landscaping, that's not a bad idea to have some areas of gravel, because the water will be absorbed into the soil sooner. Same with big boulders. If you're ever hiking and you accidentally kick over a big rock, it's always moist underneath. Or you see sometimes boulders have a bunch of other plants growing all around them, where it's a little microclimate around a boulder that sheds some of the water that we don't necessarily put down on our plants, but what nature does. I want to show you one thing over here. This was that Canna Creek buckwheat I told you about. That one that had the really red winter color and the chartreuse flowers. So this one is getting ready to bloom. This is one plant. Now I think this garden is probably 10, 13 years old. So it's one plant that's 13 years old, but that is amazing. And it's evergreen. The leaves turn red in the fall. But this is covered with those chartreuse flowers here in probably a week or two. It's going to be pretty amazing. All right, so the rest of what we'll look at will be up in the front.
What kind of a broom is that?
That is, one of the plant select brooms is the Spanish broom. So it was supposed to be, the Spanish broom is, not Spanish broom, Spanish gold broom. It's got yellow flowers. This got planted by mistake. This is going to be a moonlight broom like the one we saw back there with the pale yellow flowers. So it's still beautiful, it's fragrant, but it's the wrong broom. That's where common names are such a nightmare sometimes, because what I just did, Spanish broom was the tall one I told you about that blooms in the summer in New Mexico. Cortez Chiropractic does have one of those there up in the front by the mailbox. It dies back on really cold winters a lot. The Spanish gold broom is more cold hardy, blooms early, and stays smaller. So the name is so similar for a broom, somebody shouldn't have done it. Isn't this fun?
Yeah, you like those.
Oh God, I put them on Facebook all the time, don't I? But
Yeah,
it's a weeping spruce, and these purple new cones that come on are just amazing, and that's last year's. But anyway, it's just such a pretty color. Pardon?
They grow here?
Yeah.
He's got them in his yard.
They're just fun. Anyway,
They are.
so is everyone all right to wander to the front, or does somebody have to leave? Okay. All right. What's that, Karen?
Above and beyond the shell here.
This will wrap up quick in the front. It's a quick loop. I won't get too wordy.
Go ahead.
Aren't those? Those are hoopside spruce. And that new growth on them is unbelievably powder blue. Yeah, that's my front yard there. All the shade. Oh, yes. He's got a real big one in the backyard.
Oh, he does.
Yeah.
My hellebards must be going in the wrong place. They're about 2 inches high. They just didn't make it.
When did you plant them? Last year?
Yeah.
Okay, it'll take them a while. If I didn't tell you that, I'm sorry. It takes them 2-3 years to kind of hunker down, and then they never want to be moved.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's interesting. They're in a barrel. What we got here? Where do you want to be?
We'll start in this general area. These are our lawn samples. Look like cemetery plots, but sorry. But anyway. Right. Yeah, I won't be political. Okay. Buffalo grass out there, I'd mentioned earlier, and then this is blue grama. They are just greening up after being dormant, straw-colored most of the winter. They're fun. This is native. Buffalo's native on the eastern side of the state, but they're not, green during the winter. So if somebody has pets, that's when that can be a little bit of a problem because of the pets bringing in the dried grass clippings. To where these others are all cool season grasses that are a little more drought tolerant. The meadow out here is a hodgepodge of everything. This over here is blue fescue grass in the sign, or sheep fescue, I'm sorry, which can be blue fescue. But it's neat because you wouldn't really have to mow it if you didn't want to. That's about as tall as it gets here. And it's a clump grass. It can take either shade or sun. So it's kind of nice. Didn't mean to talk about grass, but this is that blue velvet honeysuckle that I told you I planted in the wrong spot. But look at that bark on that. It's just beautiful. And if you come here in about 2 weeks when this is just a sea of pink on that blue foliage, it's just amazing. What's that? Oh, it's quite happy. It's just the wrong plant in the wrong spot, Right.
How old is that?
18 years, I think. Yeah. Should have been transplanted about 16 years ago or moved, but I didn't do it. I was telling you about microclimates earlier on each side of your house. On the north side of our Kivo ruins here, it's shadier, a little cooler. I'm growing broadleafed evergreens there that are starting to stretch above the ruins, but they're things that normally you would plant on the north or east side of your house or in part shade. Gets a little filtered shade from the purple robe locust above us, which is yeah, they're amazing trees. They have their downside, but they're amazing.
Do these have the bean pods?
No. But it suckers white locust, which has big thorns and the little bean pods, because it's been grafted on a white locust, a white flowering. You're going to have to figure out how to give away this other gift certificate here. So I quit dropping it. This here is one of the fern bushes that I had mentioned earlier. So, it's got a bunch of roses suckering around it, but this back here. So these are last year's dried flowers. The creamy white flowers in June. The foliage is ferny, that's why it's called fern bush, and it is evergreen. So that's kind of nice. What to show? Oh, we'll keep walking here. Sorry. This here is one of those shrub spruces I had mentioned. It's the Montgomery spruce. So it's getting close to probably about where it's going to maintain itself, about 6 feet or 7 feet in just this kind of blobby sort of pyramid. So kind of fun. It's just spectacular when it's in that color, the new growth. Ephedra, the purple sand cherry here. Here's my pseudo juniper landscaping. I'm obviously lots of weeds that need pulling after the rain, but the golden juniper, the buffalo juniper here, the blue junipers here. So they have their place. You can love and hate junipers, but they cover a lot of ground, and there's not a lot of weeds coming up under the juniper behind you guys. So, what was that? This is a blue chip. It's one of my favorites, actually.
How many plants is that?
That was 2 plants.
Here and there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Here and there.
Yep. There's one big one down on the other side over here. I'll show you. A banana yucca here. This over here is a patchy plume. And again, you know, one I don't water as much. I think I told you someone near the golf course has them like 6 feet as a hedge. And this one's, you know, 4-ish maybe. White flowers in the summer, and the the pinky plumes, feathery plumes. So kind of neat.
That's a really big pot.
A really big what?
Pot.
Yes. And it was almost filled with water after the snow all melted this winter. Here, we're very clay. I think that's
clay?
pardon?
The pot is clay?
Oh, no, it's fiberglass.
Good.
Yeah. Okay, this isn't a shrub, but this will wrap up here pretty quickly. This is a cockspur hawthorn, and hawthorns are small trees like crab apples. They bloom about 2 or 3 weeks later. This one's a white flowering one, has fruit on it about the size of cranberries. And they usually fall off around Christmas time. This is a dried up one, but spectacular and pretty drought tolerant. And they're just fun. One thing we passed right by, unfortunately, but if everyone can turn around, the shrub on the berm there is the curl-leaf mountain mahogany. And this is the evergreen one I was telling you about. So kind of gets to be about a refrigerator in size, but just a fun texture to give you something else other than a pine tree or a spruce tree that has the evergreen foliage on it. That is one tough cookie for our climate. Those are 3 blue arrow junipers out there on that berm. Supposed to stay narrow. If they grow too slow, they get fat. If they grow faster with more water, they're going to stay skinny. But I like that real skinny look. There is a new juniper by Plant Select called Woodward juniper that is staying about 3 to 4 feet wide, 12 feet tall. So it'll give you that real Italian cypress sort of look if you want that look, which I love. Anyway. Well, I think that's going to wrap us up here. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Karen, how can we do this? We have one more gift certificate. Okay, we named ourselves after a native plant. What color is Cliffrose flower? Okay, you get another gift certificate. All right, back to junipers. These are blue chips again. One blue one there and one blue one here. Now they're 18, 19 years old, so that's why. But, okay, I will officially wrap up.